first Busy Bodyz and the Body Group video. My name's Kelly Moore. I'm a registered osteopath. I have a private clinic that I practice in, and I also run the companies Busy Bodyz and the Body Group. These are companies aimed at educating both children and adults about basic anatomy, not necessarily particularly in-depth stuff, but the things that I've noticed since I've opened my clinic, that there's a gap in people's everyday knowledge about how the body's put together. I started to realise that there was quite a fundamental piece of information missing when people were coming into my clinic, having hurt themselves and not really understanding how the body's put together. And obviously I don't expect everybody to understand really difficult, complex parts of our anatomy, but the majority of it isn't particularly complex, and having a basic understanding of it will give both our children and our adults a greater ability to take responsibility for their own well-being and physical healthcare. I think it's really, really important whilst we're in lockdown. I think it's important particularly for adults of school children who aren't getting this sort of information, which their teachers will have to a degree because they understand the importance of the development of gross motor and fine motor skills, which we'll come on to in a bit. So just explaining just the links between how the body's put together, what these skills are, and how you can help to develop them should be some really good information, which you can have some fun along the way by understanding as well. So I will introduce my team first of all. There's me, I'm Kelly, I'm the osteopath. There's Mr. Bones, he doesn't say much, but he's always there, totally solid. And I also have my iPad, which I'll be using to show you some of the more conceptual ideas that I'll be talking to you about, and hopefully by me talking and being able to use the iPad as well, we'll be able to get the point across, and hopefully everyone will understand. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to talk about how the basic structure of the body, how are we put together. And most of you all know we are held up, our structure inside, all of what you see on the outside is held up by our skeleton, our Mr. Bones. The skeleton is made up of a number of individual bones that move at the joints, the articulating surface, and it's those joints that allow the body to have proper movement. Those joints are held together by pieces of bands of connective tissue called ligaments. A ligament runs from one bone to another, and you're born with a certain length of ligament as, from birth. So some people will have ligaments that are on the longer side, and some will have some that are on the shorter side, and that doesn't really change. You may have heard recently that people can be hypermobile. Those people tend to have longer ligaments. They have more joint play, more movement in the basic articulation of the joint. So, and then you have people who have got slightly shorter ligaments, and they tend to have less movement at the joint when we're stripping away everything else. I'm now just talking about how that particular joint works when we haven't got anything overlying it like muscles. Right, so that's a ligament. The ligament holds bone to bone. A tendon attaches a muscle to a bone. So a tendon, whilst it's made up of exactly the same material as a ligament, it provides a slightly different role. So the tendon is the same connective tissue, but it attaches the muscle to the bone as opposed to just a bone to bone. And the tendon, because it's attached to the muscle, has more chance of contracting and expanding, although it wouldn't be the actual tendon that's expanding, it's because it blends in to the muscle belly. I think I can probably explain that to you slightly better. So now I've got this open, and I've got here, these are the legs, both of the legs. And if I zoom in here and I click just on here, see this part here that bit highlighted in blue is a ligament. It's connected, so all of these white pieces here are connective tissue called ligaments. Right, so the ligament is a standard length and holds the bone to bone. Now, if I show you a muscle, let's find a nice muscle here that will give us a good... So here we've got a really good example of a tendon. So if you have a look at the front muscles of the legs, so the quadriceps here, named because there are 4 of them that make up the group of muscles. If I highlight here, okay, if you see where that muscle is highlighted, if I then unhighlight it as you're looking at it, you can see these white bands that attach onto the bone at either end of the muscle. So the length of the tendon doesn't change, but the muscle that's blended into it can contract and elongate as you want it to. Now, whilst I've got this open, I'm going to talk about the next part of how we're put together. Our muscles tend to work in pairs, and we have a very obvious front side of our body, and if this will actually turn around, a back side of our body. And both of those sides are really, really important. Well, I'll come on to that a bit more later, but it's we're thinking a lot when we're doing this about the fact that we're engaging a lot of our front musculature at the moment. We're engaging it when we're sitting down all the time, and we're crushing and contracting all of this front musculature. And what happens when we do that is that we elongate and overstretch and don't use all of our back musculature. And we need to be thinking a bit more about how we're going to do that, particularly when we're stuck at home all day and we're not breaking up the day into sections in the same way that we would be when we were at school. Just to move on from that, I'm going to be talking a lot about gross motor and fine motor skills in the upcoming videos, and I'm just going to make sure that you guys know exactly what I mean by that. So it really does basically just mean a gross motor skill that you develop are skills that are developed using the big muscle groups of the body. So using the legs, using the torso, the core muscles, using the big muscles of the arms. So anything that you're improving or developing using those muscles are your gross motor skills. So they would include things like running, hopping, skipping, jumping. And then you have fine motor skills, and they're the skills that you develop using the smaller intrinsic muscles in your body, like the smaller muscular control that you get from those tiny muscles. As it happens, both of those tend to work hand in hand. If you're thinking about the fact that you are trying to control tiny movements here, you have to have strong, large muscles to be able to keep this solid and in place to try and then do those smaller, more delicate and intricate movements. That pretty much explains most of what I want to go into at the moment. What we'll be doing is posting hopefully at least two videos a week. We're aiming to post one on Monday and one on a Wednesday or a Thursday. These would generally be ideas that you can do with your children either indoors or outdoors to target them improving their gross and fine motor skills, as well as combating this forward scrunched up posture that they have while they're sitting doing their schoolwork or using their iPads or laptops or any technology that they happen to be using at the time. This, although the development of gross and fine motor skills becomes less important as children develop, the activities that I'll be doing would be worth considering for secondary school children at the same time. Hopefully you can show them some of these videos and they may understand or at least get involved in some of these things, because they're actually a really missed out group in terms of not only the education but the surge in the amount of things that they watch in terrible physical positions on their bodies. This rise in Netflix, knowing that I have more and more patients coming into my clinic around the 16-year age mark that have problems with their neck and refuse to believe me that it's vastly to do with the fact that they're watching Netflix on their laptop for all hours of every day. So if you can get your secondary school children interested, it's definitely worth them having a watch. Right, so hopefully I will see you a bit later on today with our first proper video.